Well, we continue this morning in 3 John. And if we get through our lesson, then we'll go into maybe begin Jude, but we'll see how it goes. So this week we begin with question 6. And Dave has asked us, what may be learned concerning the Lord's expectations of the local church from the following passages? And our first reading is verses 5 to 8 in 3 John, 5 to 8. Gord, do you want to read all that, please?
Beloved, you do faithfully whatever you do for the brethren and for strangers, who have borne witness of your love before the church. If you send them forward on their journey in a manner worthy of God, you will do well, because they went forth for his name's sake, taking nothing from the Gentiles. We therefore ought to receive such that we may become fellow workers for the truth.
Okay. What do you see here that has to do with what the Lord expects us as a church to do? What comes to your mind? Any thoughts?
About showing kindness to both brethren and strangers.
The witch hunt? I'm going to see if this fan's on.
Yeah. Where we go?
Showing kindness to brethren and strangers?
But, right. Okay. Exactly. Showing kindness to not only our brothers and sisters, but to strangers. What about verse 6? What do you see in there? Who is John speaking of when he says, if you send them forward? You think he's speaking of faithful workers, sending them out to spread the gospel? What about in a manner worthy of God? What comes to your mind there? Say if we decide to send Jeff to China, what would that consist of?
Him learning Chinese.
The which court?
Him learning Chinese first.
Yeah. Okay. Send him to school to learn Chinese first. There's okay.
Have it prepared.
The which?
Have it prepared.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. But I was thinking we'd have to help out financially, wouldn't we? We're sending him there as a church. According to verse 6, he's not going on his own. He hasn't made that decision. We're sending him. And so then we should help him out financially, supporting them and encouraging them would fall into that category. Tammy?
And then he goes on to say that then we become fellow workers for the truth. I mean, not everybody is in a position where they can do that, go out and spread the word in other places. There are constraints for everybody to be able to do that, so it's a way that we can share in that work, in that ministry.
Exactly. Yeah. We let them know don't we, that we're behind them, we're encouraging them, and also it encourages us, because we realize some of us maybe can't go, but Jeff can go, be able to go, so that encourages us. We're being a part of that and helping out.
Yeah, if we can't physically
Right.
support something, we can either financially help support, we can emotionally help support. There's other ways of helping when it's one avenue of help you can't do,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
And it can be applied to us too, right? If we can't teach people on our own, we can set up Bible classes
Right, Gord.
with somebody that can
Yeah.
and bring people to them. So there's things that we can do in our own lives that pertain to. This is all about spreading the gospel.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So everybody has an ability, some more than others, some less than others.
Right.
So what we have, we're supposed to use.
Yeah. And we all have different abilities. Brings to mind the thought of a team. You know, think of in your workplace. It's, everyone has their different skills. It's all pointed in one direction. But yeah, we see that for sure. And it's interesting, verse 7. We sometimes wonder maybe these were Jewish brethren, and we see that they're taking nothing from the Gentiles. They're not seeking any help from them. The help is coming from the church, from the brothers and sisters in Christ. And then verse 8, we therefore ought to receive such that we may become fellow workers of the truth. Well, that goes with what Gord was just saying. The receiving such just means we're all promoting this effort together, and letting the ones that are going know. And so, okay, no other thoughts, and we'll move down to verses 9 to 11. Kala, do you want to read that, please?
I wrote something to the church, but Diotrephes, who loves to be first among them, does not accept what we say. For this reason, if I come, I will call attention to his deeds, which he does, unjustly accusing us with wicked words, and not satisfied with this, he himself does not receive the brethren either. And he forbids those who desire to do so and puts them out of the church. Beloved, do not imitate what is evil, but what is good. The one thing who does good is of God. The one who does good is of God. The one who does evil has not seen God.
Okay. In this situation here, Diotrephes, this man is presenting a great challenge, isn't he? This chap. And being a member, okay. So what do we see there as far as how we would handle that situation? And remember, this is an exceptional man here, because John is saying that he's not only not receiving what he says as an apostle, but he is bad-mouthing him big time, okay? And he even has the attitude where we're not sure, it doesn't say this man is an elder, or what he is in the church, but he seems to feel like he has the authority to throw people out of the church. So if that if you can set yourselves into that situation, into that group, how would God expect us to handle this situation here?
We're told to note those who are causing division.
Okay,
And that's what he's doing. He's causing division.
right, good.
Right? And it has to be dealt with.
Right,
Before it spreads and poisons the church.
okay. Yeah, there'd probably be no doubt everyone in the membership would know what he's like, especially if he's badmouthed John, and especially if he's told people you're not wanted in this church. He's almost like he's the captain of it. So, okay, Gord points out to let others know. Jeff?
The apostles in the letters to the churches and to individual Christians tend to always remind the Christians that they should follow the example of the apostles.
Right.
So without John even telling them what they should do, he's showing them by example what they should do. Because he said that when he comes, he's not going to be silent about Diotrephes. He's already exposed him, he's named him, exposed him for what he's doing, and he's going to tell him, correct him. So the implication is that they should be doing the same thing.
Right.
The men in the congregation to take Diotrephes and deal with that situation. He even says in verse 11, do not imitate what is evil, but imitate what's good.
Right. Right. Okay. Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly with that. I thought, first off, we would, if Diotrephes was within our group, well, then we need to band together. And how are we going to handle this? And by Jeff pointing out, don't imitate what is evil, the easiest thing would be for everybody to blow up at this man and be just as rude as he is. But that isn't how we are to handle it. And so I thought, well, we band together, we find out, as Jeff was saying, how we are to handle these situations righteously with this man. And we come together and we make those decisions. Okay, how are we going to overcome this false teacher? And those even who would abuse anyone. Colin?
Well, as far as I know, before this fellowship, you ought to go to the person and talk to him about it, according to the Bible. I don't know where the book, chapter, and verses. Then if he doesn't listen, you take a couple witnesses.
Exactly.
If he still doesn't listen, then you tell it to the church. This is the procedure before this fellowship, according to the Bible, as far as I know.
Right. No, that's true. That's the only reason I didn't mention that was maybe because that point has passed with Diotrephes. If it's this far, if this man is gone this far into apostasy where he is even ignoring the apostleship of John and asking people to leave the church, he's already a big major problem. Jeff?
That one passage that the Lord refers to is when it's a problem between two. Obviously not something that's known, it's simply something between two. But Diotrephes is the wrong that he's doing is within the congregation. Everyone is aware of it, whether they want to admit it or not. It's already well known.
Right.
It's not necessary to try and keep it, just quiet between the two. That needs to be taken care of.
Yes.
Before the church.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
But yeah, there is always the standard of how we do things. The standard is God's word.
Yes. Exactly. Yeah. And it's maybe an uncommon case, Diotrephes. We don't hear of this problem with one single person within the church, but it makes you realize, though, that there needs to be a lot of thought put in to this decision to overcome a situation like this. So, okay, in verse 12 then, 3 John verse 12, Menchie, I'll get you to read that, please.
Demetrius had good report of all men and of the truth itself. Yeah, and we also bear record, and ye know that our record is true.
Okay, what comes to mind here? We're speaking of a man now. We spoke of Diotrephes. Now we're speaking of Demetrius. What do we know of him? What do we know of his nature?
He's got a good reputation, so he has to be a God-fearing person.
Right, good. There's good testimony of this man, isn't there? He spoke well of in the congregation. And what do you think of, speaking of his character, John says, and from the truth itself. Okay, he's speaking of, he just spoke of good testimony from all, and from the truth itself. What does that bring to your mind? If we have if we put forth a good testimony of a brother or a sister, Tammy?
It's not like people just like him, that he's a likable person, but he actually does what is right as well.
Right, according to the truth. Exactly. And that's how I believe that's what John is speaking here. And from the truth itself, from the Word of God, is showing his actions are in line with what God expects. And then John goes on to say, and we also bear witness, and you know that our testimony is true. So from what everybody said, in other words, we stand behind those who would stand for truth. And maybe in this situation with Diotrephes, we're not told, but maybe Demetrius has stood up to him. And so John is reminding us that Demetrius is a good example. Stand behind him, encourage him, knowing maybe what he is up against with Diotrephes. So, okay, we'll move on then and to relationships of Christians. And we're asked, how might the Apostle John be described based on the following passages? We kind of covered a lot of this last week, but we can whip through it. Verse 4. Jeff, I'll get you to read that one, please.
I have no greater joy than to hear that my children walk in truth.
Okay. How would you describe John's attitude? His nature?
And he cares for his brethren
to
the point that, their actions bring him joy.
Right.
But his joy is centered on the truth.
Yeah.
He's not willing, from what I see here, to be happy with brethren, even if they are doing very faithfully the things that they should be doing. has great joy in them when they follow what God requires of them.
Right, Jeff. Walking in the truth. Remember, we spoke about what that meant. Yeah, he gives priority to spiritual matters, doesn't he? Everything else, it seems secondary. He doesn't mention that. And as Jeff said, he was deeply concerned, which brought him great joy. That shows how much he was concerned for one another. And which should be our case, shouldn't it? Tammy?
And he refers to them as my children.
Yes.
It's a personal relationship.
Yes.
And a deep feeling that he has for them.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, John speaks in those terms a lot, doesn't he? We learn a lot from John's nature, which reminds me that we can stand for truth, and we can always be as a soldier and ready to fight for the Lord's cause. But sometimes to show the love is not quite as easy sometimes with us. And John shows that they go hand in hand, don't they? You can overcome a weakness in one area by being strong in the other. By standing for truth, then we're reminded of the love that we should have. To see someone else falling away from the Lord, that should put us in a panic mode. We need to do everything that we can to help that person. And then verse 8, down to verse 8. Tammy, do you want to read that, please?
We therefore ought to receive such that we may become fellow workers for the truth.
And again, what do we see? What do we see here? How might John be?
He's an admonisher.
Yeah.
He's admonishing them to do good things.
Okay, right.
Receive the brethren.
Okay, Lord. He's telling them to be caring.
Yeah, don't be like the atrophies.
Right. That's always and ready to lend assistance and encourage, as we've said beforehand, which is necessary, isn't it, with brothers and sisters? Sometimes we're always a little afraid in certain situations. But when someone else encourages you, and, even you can do it, you know your scriptures. That's an encouragement. And then down to, again, Diotrephes, verses 9 to 10. Annette, do you want to read that, please?
I wrote unto the church, but Diotrephes, who loveth to have the eminence among them, deceiveth us not. Wherefore, if I come, I will remember his deeds which he doeth, threatening against us with malicious words, and not content therewith. Neither doth he himself receive the brethren, and forbidden them that would, and casted them out of the church.
Okay, and again, what's John telling us to do? We've already kind of covered it.
He's not going to accept that behavior. He's going to confront it.
Right, good. Be ready to admonish, right? And also came to my mind is to speak up for the innocent. Whoever Diotrephes has thrown out of the church, we need to go to that person too. We deal with Diotrephes, but then we need to go to that person and find out, first of all, what the problem was. But then, if it was just simply a matter of them standing up for truth and Diotrephes not liking that and throwing them out, then we need to go to that person is innocent of what Diotrephes has done to them. We need to encourage them and let them know that we stand behind what they done. Their stand, Jeff.
Well, reading that now and then thinking about what John said in verse 4, that he loves the church there. And as Tammy said, he refers to them as his children. Diotrephes is one of them. Diotrephes is one of the church that he loves. But just as he said, he has no greater joy than to hear that his children walk in the truth. I can only imagine his disappointment when one of his children do not walk in the truth.
Right.
And he's letting Diotrephes know. He's not allowing his love for Christians to cloud over his need to correct
Right.
someone who's not walking in the truth. And we know John would want him to change his attitude and return to what he should be doing.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, John only, speaking of Diotrephes, that's a good point too. He only points out what he is doing that's not in accordance with God's word, isn't he? He doesn't, go off the track and call him names and things like that.
Yeah, it's never a personal
Right.
attack on a person.
Right.
It is simply exposing the things they're doing that are wrong and need to be corrected. That's it.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's a good point because a lot of times we hear people badmouth others when that shouldn't be. Point out the error. We don't need the side remarks and little jabs, if you will. We don't need that, and it's not right. Never mind, we don't need it. That goes along with the verse Gord read. Where was it now? Speaking of evil, imitating, verse 11. Don't imitate what is evil. Sometimes working with emotions, then we fall into that category. But we see John doesn't do that. And then, what did we read? Verse 11? What was the last one? 9:10? 9:10?
You just talked about
Right. Verse 11. Who read? Udime. Do you want to read that, please?
Dear friends, don't let this bad example influence you. Follow only what is good. Remember that those who do good prove that they are God's children, and those who do evil prove that they do not know God.
Okay, and again, we know Dave likes us to repeat a lot, but that's his way of teaching. But again, in this verse, what do we see of John's attitude? What do you notice there? Is he always, what do you mean?
John was encouraging the brethren not to follow bad example like that, not to be like him, but to follow good example like I think Demetrius, yes, he was mentioned as a good example, while that was a bad example. So he is admonishing them to be of good cheer, to follow good example, and to do good. And those who do good are God's children, and those who do evil, they prove that they don't know God.
Exactly. Yeah, that's right.
Because we have two examples in this very chapter, the actual feast and Demetrius.
Yes.
He's advising them not to follow the actual feast, but be like Demetrius. who speaks the truth and stands for the truth.
Right.
Because like that job is now, assuming there were people that were willing to help the visiting preacher, so then you would like, don't do it. He doesn't do it, he doesn't want others to do it. So that's a bad example. You don't want to do it, then leave others to do it. But no, I don't do it, don't do it. So Paul is admonishing them not to be like that.
Right. That's a good point. Yes. Yeah. And let God's desires be known. That's what we're doing, isn't it? By doing right and by helping out. And verse 12 then again, Demetrius has a good testimony from all and from the truth itself, and we also bear witness, and you know that our testimony is true. Again, what do we see there of John's attitude?
I think he kind of like he recognizes those that are walking in truth.
Yeah.
He's not afraid to commend somebody for it.
Right, Gord, exactly.
Kind of encourages others that hearing this that they want to be more like Demetrius. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think maybe sometimes as men we fall into the category of, we hear someone at the table or we hear someone's prayer and we're afraid we don't go to them and say, hey, appreciate your prayer, or appreciated your thoughts at the table. I'm not saying we don't do that because we don't, but sometimes as men we kind of shy away from that. But I think it's good to do that, and I see that in this verse 12. He's encouraging Demetrius.
But that shouldn't just be a men thing, it's a woman thing too.
The which word?
I said that's just not just a man thing, that could be women too.
Well, yeah, that's true.
I mean,
but
it's not part of worship.
No.
Right, but as a brother, I mean, if Jeremy preaches a really good message, let him know it encourages him.
That's true, yeah.
We all have that ability to encourage one another, whether man or female.
That's true. But it just seems, it's my opinion, the ladies always show more encouragement, love. They're not afraid to do that. Guys, we hold back a little bit because that's we have a tough image to uphold, maybe. But that thought came to me, though, here with what John is speaking of with Demetrius. No, encourage one another. Say something, as Gord says. So we'll move along then, and we're asked here again, Dave says, why would Gaius, okay, we're back to the man that John wrote to, why would Gaius be considered worthy of commendation according to the following passages? And verses 3 and 4, maybe I'll read these again, time's moving here quickly. John speaking, for I rejoiced greatly when brethren came and testified of the truth that is in you, just as you walk in the truth. I have no greater joy than to hear that my children walk in truth. Why does John consider Gaius is worthy of his commendation, according to those verses? What's Gaius walking in?
Truth.
Right.
And it's not just one person. The brethren are telling Paul this.
Right.
Or John telling John this.
Exactly, Gord. Yeah.
So that even adds more credibility to the first person who told John.
Yeah.
Gaius is walking in truth.
Exactly. Gaius is walking in truth. He's helping others. John, hey, that's great. And then verses 5 to 7 again. Beloved, you do faithfully whatever you do for the brethren and for strangers who have borne witness of your love before the church. If you send them forward on their journey in a manner worthy of God, you will do well, because they went forth for his name's sake, taking nothing from the Gentiles. Again, what is Gaius doing here? John's commending him for? Is he kind of just walking away from the situation?
Well, he's even doing good to strangers.
Right. Right. That's a good point. Yeah. He's helping faithful brethren, but he's also, he's helping faithful strangers, though, people that we don't know. So John's commending for that. And verse 8, we therefore ought to receive such, that we may be fellow workers for the truth. Remember, now he's speaking there of those that are in the congregation and strangers. And what do we see John commending Gaius for there? What's Gaius, first off, what does he realize as a Christian about himself? What does he realize? Do you think we can say he realizes his duty as a Christian, and ready to help? Sometimes we may tend to shy away from being helpful. And John's pointing out here that no. And speaking of imitating, Gaius is one that we should be imitating also, along with Demetrius.
And what he does is he's doing it faithfully.
Yeah, right, good. Yeah, good point.
I'm not ashamed to own my Lord.